Welcome to Love 2.0, an insightful conversation about God, love, and sexuality. Our mission is to educate, equip, and inspire you to experience the love that you deeply desire and deserve. Our goal is to show men and women the intersection of God, love, and sexuality so that you can experience the life on a whole new level. That's Love 2.0. I'm your host, Michael Oden. Now let's dive in. So guys, today is the conclusion of our 6-part series with Dr. Corey, where he's been gracious enough over these past several weeks here to engage with us and to share time, and most importantly, and share some tips, insight, and resources on how you can begin to live and have a better marriage and to prevent the possibility of you and your couple potentially experiencing divorce. We talked about money. We talked about sex. We talked about parenting. We talked about just household responsibilities. We even dived into how to develop a deeper, intimate connection with one another. Today's episode leads us in the direction of helping us to really understand and to support one another in some of the challenges that one may have experienced over the course of their life prior to marriage or potentially even during the marriage, but with the focus on prior to. And so we're going to be diving into how childhood trauma can ultimately have an impact on your marriage. So with that being said, before we kind of dive into this topic, I want to give Dr. Corey just the opportunity to introduce himself for those of you who have not had an opportunity to meet him. Dr. Corey, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. So again, I'm Dr. Corey Carlisle. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified Christian sex therapist. I've been in practice for about 13 years now, meeting mostly with couples and individuals navigating the relational, sexual, spiritual aspects of their life. Over that time, I realized that a lot of men came into my office as good men, but often didn't know how to get out of their own way. And so a lot of the relational challenges they were bumping into is because they didn't know how to get out of their own way. And so over these last several years, I've spent more time writing, teaching, figuring out how to pour into the lives of men to help them better understand themselves and to live with greater freedom, power, and love throughout their life and relationships. Still work with couples and individuals dealing with all variety of relational and sexual matters, but my subspecialty has become working with men in particular.
Gotcha. Thank you for the introduction. As we kind of maneuver into today's conversation, again, the title and the topic of this conversation is how childhood trauma can ultimately affect you and potentially lead you down the road of divorce. The reason why I wanted to bring this to you and to have this conversation is because, and this is my experience, as well as my experience in talking with friends, family, etc. Many people enter into marriage with unacknowledged or unresolved childhood trauma that sneakishly puts restraints on their marital relationship. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is they don't know that what happened to them way back then is impacting how they're living out life today.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to bring you in today just to give people a professional perspective and insight on this topic and conversation. And so my first question to you is, how can couples know if one party's childhood trauma is affecting their marriage?
Yeah, good question. And in full disclosure, and so I talked about my subspecialty, how marriage, sexuality, men, trauma is not my subspecialty. But I think still, as it relates to this conversation, in your question, sometimes couples come in for general communication, intimacy issues. And part of what we discover in our time is like, there's more going on. Like we're trying to have a conversation and there's a reaction that doesn't seem to fit the scenario in front of us. And so when we start finding those patterns of reaction and intensity that doesn't seem to fit what's going on in the present, that start to be a clue to me to, all right, is there more going on? Is there unaddressed trauma that we've not dealt with yet? And so we can figure out what that looks like for them as a couple, whether we continue working together or whether that individual gets some specialized help in that particular area to address with the trauma. But part of what we look for is there this pattern of triggers that doesn't seem to fit the current scenario? That's often the clue that there's more going on than what's happening in the present.
So you say triggers, obviously without names and specifics on stories. What are some triggers that you can share that one might hear and be like, Yeah, I do see that happening within or within my interactions with my spouse, et cetera. Can you just share and give a little bit of insight as to what some of those triggers may be?
Yeah, it really can be anything. Some of it is touch. So I've had some clients where if they were feeling particularly triggered from their past, any sort of touch was just off limits for them. And so they knew once they were getting to that point of don't touch me at all, that was kind of reprocessing some of their past. For others, it is we've talked about money, and so how you're handling money. I'm blowing up because I want to avoid some of the issues that I have around money from my childhood traumas. That something happened from childhood, and it's reminding me of that story of being controlled, of being out of control. And so anything related to that, okay, this is not a money conversation. Like you're saying, it's money, but it's that control sense that you're reacting to because you had an experience of being out of control, a traumatic experience that's now being played out in the money arena. Uh, and so whether that's personality, temperament, whatever that is, it can trigger something that you're reminding me of something that happened to me before. And I'm bringing to that and projecting onto that with a lot of intensity that doesn't seem to fit the current situation. But the triggers can be truly anything. And so what we look for is that level of that recurring pattern of intensity that doesn't seem to fit the current situation.
Makes sense. Um, Now, one of the things that, and again, you're the professional. I'm in the. I've always probably considered myself to be in the stadium, just
Okay.
looking and watching and understanding, people in their situations. But one thing that I can say that I've had to even grow deeper in for myself is just having empathy for my spouse and supporting them through the ups and downs of the situations that they may or may not have experienced that were detrimental in their childhood. So it's really
Mm-hmm.
developing empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Prime example is public knowledge. Like my wife has not met her biological father.
Okay.
So I've had to learn that there are going to be situations and instances and scenarios in which we may have interaction or engagement. And to your point about the intensity or the lack thereof, or something may not seem to fit, and it's not necessarily due to this situation, but it's due to something from the past, something they didn't
Mm-hmm.
have or did have, et cetera, and have to learn how to navigate that. So it might be, for me, it might be slowing up. It might
Mm-hmm.
be the timing on which I engage in the conversation. It might be really, really thinking about, is this even really worth having a conversation about? It
Yeah.
might just simply be, you know what? I understand that's just her, her imperfections are what makes her perfect for me. But my ultimate question to you is, how can couples learn to support and develop empathy for their spouse and to support them through the ups and downs of them dealing with these childhood trauma issues that they may have?
Yeah. It is hard. It is difficult. And so we're talking offline that my baby girl just broke her collarbone recently, and she's in a brace to start preschool. And so in taking her there, the teachers were thankful that she was in a brace because that was a signal that she was still recovering, that she had a wound, that she had a trauma, and she was recovering from that. And so all the kids knew that if she had a brace on, all right, we don't have to be as rough and tumble with you because you're still recovering. But when we're dealing with issues of the heart, emotions, relational trauma, there's not always a clear signal that, oh, yes, there's a break in your heart. Of course, that you need extra care and understanding and patience and empathy. We don't see that. And so that's part of what we have to learn is that once we're able to start naming that, okay, yes, well, I can't see the trauma. That doesn't mean that it's not real.
Mm.
And so how do I be patient and understanding to be curious? Okay, what does that mean for you? Like, my heart is not broken in that way. I've not experienced that particular trauma. Help me understand what this means for you. And so part of empathy is entering the world of the other. And so both from a intellectual, mental standpoint, tell me what that's about, but also from a feeling heart standpoint, okay, what is it like to experience that? Where I'm trying to, as best I can, get in your shoes. Can't fully do that, but as best I can, I'm trying to get in your shoes and experience things from your point of view. And so can I imagine what it's like not to have ever met, to use your example of meeting my biological dad. Can I imagine what that might be like? That's not my experience, but can I put myself in that situation? That situations where, like, experiencing loss, that I've not experienced that loss, but I know what loss is like. And so my loss is different, but I know what loss is like. And so can I use that as a way to, all right, if I experience loss in this way, maybe you're experiencing loss while it's different. I understand that experience, that shared experience of loss. And so can I find that common connection, that shared experience, that even though our stories are different, can I imagine what it's like to experience something like you're experiencing? How can I enter into your world? Again, can't do that perfectly, but can I find some level of shared experience with you that allows me to empathize? Thinking from a Christian worldview that Christ was able to experience our humanity. Does that mean he experienced every aspect, every detail that we experience? No, but as far as humanity, he experienced humanity, and so he's able to empathize with our weakness. And so in the same way, we don't have to have the exact same story as our spouse to empathize with them, but can we find that shared humanity with them that, oh, okay, yes, that part I'm able to empathize with.
I love that. I think what you said hopefully can unlock a level of verbal and nonverbal, as well as mental understanding for couples who find themselves dealing with, trauma, because what you're saying is it's really finding that relatable situation or story. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but something that you can relate and then begin to get understanding from,
Right.
to apply
Right.
to what it is that your spouse may be going through, so that you can then begin to have a deeper understanding and insight as to where they're at and can deal with them better. So I think that's key for a lot of couples who might be in this situation. My next question for you is, and this is for the person who has experienced trauma, what are some steps or questions that they can ask themselves to confirm if their childhood trauma is still actively playing an active role in their life?
Yeah, good question. Some of it is just doing their own inner work, self-work, of awareness that my reaction is that in this moment, am I dealing with something in here and now, or is there something else that I'm pulling from? And so can I have an honest assessment with myself? And this is where friends come in. This is where certainly counseling can come in, where we have our blind spots. And sometimes, again, this is just a way that we've always done, and we don't recognize it as a trigger. We don't recognize the intensity of it. And so sometimes we need someone outside of ourselves to be that mirror. And sometimes our spouse is just too close because we think they just don't understand, or we personalize it with them. But someone who doesn't have a dog in that fight, as it were, to be able to give us some honest feedback of, okay, maybe that is not fitting to this moment. Maybe there is something else going on, and can we explore that? That certainly, if you can do that self-reflection yourself, by all means do that. But often we need someone outside of ourselves to help us see that, yeah, that reaction is not fitting to this moment, and maybe something else is going on. And can we go on that journey of exploration?
Yeah, I like that. And I think us having a mirror in life is beneficial. And the Bible even talks about, having advisors, so that you can make the proper choices and the best choices for yourself. And most importantly, to, stay in alignment with God's will for your life. But you're spot on with that. And I think, and I would encourage couples to, and this is something that I always say, your spouse is not your enemy, right? Your spouse is, you have to be and look at your spouse as being on the same team. So
Right.
if you find yourself in a situation, feel free to chime in, Dr. Corey, but if you find yourself in a situation to where your spouse is bringing something to you, and it's in love, and it's something that they have mentioned to you potentially over the course of time, and it's consistent, and you make them the villain, then I think that may be an opportunity where you can sit back and reflect on yourself and say, you know what? They're not my villains. They are literally just being a mirror and are reflecting on to me what their experience of me is. Right. And this is an opportunity for me to go deeper and to potentially get help.
Yeah. And that's some of what we sort through in counseling, is like in trying to Um, well, think of the teaching of dealing with the log in your own eye first before you're dealing with the speck in your brother eye. Well, sometimes we see issues in our spouse that need to be addressed, but we've not squared our side of the street away first. And so, all right, how do I deal with my side of the street and make sure that I'm not intentionally or unintentionally pushing my spouse's buttons? Once I've done that, now I can see clearly to deal with things on their side. And so there comes a point where, hey, there's this pattern that I keep seeing and I would like to address it. But and part of that is, how do I communicate that to you in a way, like you said, with love and gentleness and kindness, where if it's in a fight, I'm saying, hey, you always do this and you always act like your mother, and maybe you have trouble. Like, that's not going to be well received if it's done so in anger or in the midst of an argument. But if it's done so with a curiosity, a love, a gentleness, then it's more likely to be received. But even still, my spouse may not be ready to receive that yet. And so that's when, okay, yeah, I'm bringing this up. I squared my side of the street away as best I can, not perfect, but I've cleaned it up decently. And I'm bringing this to you with patience and gentleness and kindness, and you're still vilifying me. Okay, that's another clue that something else is going on. And so, all right, how do we get some other help so that you can't have that mirror, that if you cannot receive that from me, and we can all probably think of examples of this, of someone else says the exact same thing we said, but all of a sudden you can receive it. It's like, I've been saying that for years, but somehow someone else says it and they get it. Okay, I can be humble enough that if you need to hear that from someone else, I'm not going to be mad at it. I just want us to be able to acknowledge whatever that thing is.
Yeah, the running joke in my house is, this is when Oprah was on.
Okay.
I used to always tell my house, man, if Oprah said it, it's gold.
Yes.
I could have said the same thing. The same thing. And it'd be dust in the wind. If Oprah comes and says something similar to the same thing, it's like, oh, let me make note of this. So yes, you're spot on. You're spot on. In
human nature, we feel some sort of way about that, but whatever. At the end, if it's truth and you're receiving it, then receive the truth however you need to receive it, from Oprah or whoever.
And you said something that leads me into my next and last question about seeking help, right? So when is it advisable for couples to seek professional counseling or therapy to address childhood trauma that may or may not, that may be impacting their marriage or just ultimately be impacting their life?
And so when you find yourself in gridlock, a recurring problem that doesn't seem to resolve, and so you're fighting around it and it never seems to resolve, or your marriage is becoming empty, so you find yourself drifting apart, it doesn't have the passion, the intimacy, the connection, because there's this unresolved issue, this elephant that we don't know how to address. Okay, now it's time to get help. That if you're able to address it and move forward, then carry on. But if we're finding ourselves, we're not able to address that, we're drifting farther apart, we're getting mad at each other, we're becoming proverbial roommates, yes, something needs to shift. And so by all means, reach out for help at that point.
Gotcha. So with that said, we know that this is, all of these topics have obviously been heavy, some a tad bit easier to go deeper into. The conversation around trauma is a very touchy conversation and a very touchy topic that I think needs very special expertise and insight to be able to help couples unravel and navigate. So with that being said, just relate to us, about how you could potentially help a client with this, and if need be, make a referral to them. And this is just for folks who might be interested in reaching out to you about potential help to dealing with some childhood trauma that might be present with them.
Yeah. So as I was mentioning, trauma is not my specialty. And so I'm glad that there's colleagues out there who have dedicated their time, professional training to specializing in trauma. And so depending on where you're at in your story, certainly I can meet with you to see if we're a good fit in sorting through that particular issue, or if one of my colleagues would be a better fit to sort through that particular trauma issue. Often where it shows up in my office is as it impacts a couple. And so I'm not necessarily helping you sort through individually your trauma story. I'll be helping you sort through as a couple. Here's how that's showing up in your marriage. And so happy to join you in that story of, yes, we're recognizing that trauma is impacting our marriage, and how do we sort through that? How do we, to a previous point, empathize and understand each other as we're sorting through trauma? But if you need a deeper dive individually on your trauma journey, your healing journey, then certainly happy to help you find those resources and other colleagues who are able to join you in that particular part of your story.
Gotcha. So with that being said, Dr. Corey, as we part ways, do you have the bandwidth to bring on new clients at your practice?
Yeah, I'm still accepting new clients. I see clients in person in Swanee, Georgia, and then online as well.
Gotcha. So guys, and we didn't dive into this or talk about this in any of our episodes or in today's episode particularly, but if you feel as if you need to speak to somebody professionally about challenges in your life, present, past, or even what you're worrying about in the future, I highly recommend that you seek the assistance of a counselor, licensed therapist. Talking to your friends is great. Getting online and rattling off your life story, your life challenges is okay too. But most importantly, I would highly recommend that you seek the services of a professional, because they can truly help you navigate your current situation. And most importantly, as Dr. Corey mentioned, the professional that you seek, anyone who's worth a grain of salt, they will help you as best as they can. And most importantly, they will be able to refer you to folks who can help you in other situations or manners that is not fit within their expertise. And I think that is as much of a benefit as you get from meeting with somebody that you can get. They can help you, or they can refer you to somebody that can.
Great.
So
Great.
I encourage you guys, if you're dealing with something in your life that's possibly affecting your marriage, or just who you are and who you bring to the marriage, reach out to Dr. Corey. His contact information is below, and seek the help and the guidance that you need so that you can begin to live the life that you truly desire and deserve. That's the whole purpose of us getting together and having these conversations with folks like Dr. Corey and others. That's the whole mission of Love 2.0. So with that said, guys, we appreciate your time. We'll see you on the next episode. Talk to you soon.